If you feel surrounded right now, stay here with me. This moment is not accidental. Some battles don't shout, they press quietly, until the heart feels heavy. Maybe you woke up today with a strange tension, as if something was wrong but you couldn't explain it. Or maybe it's not fear at all, just exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from defending yourself over and over, from trying to stay calm while pressure keeps building. Before we go further, I want you to do something simple. Write one short word in the comments. Here, not for the algorithm, for you. It's a quiet way of saying you're present and not running. Psalm 35 begins in this exact place, not in comfort, not in celebration, but in the middle of unfair opposition. David realizes that what he is facing is bigger than arguments or misunderstandings. He is dealing with intentions, lies, and hidden plans. And if you've ever felt attacked without reason, you understand this feeling deeply. There are people who smile at you in public and work against you in private. There are conversations you never heard, but their consequences reached you anyway. There are attacks that don't come loudly, but slowly drain your peace. This is where the first shift happens in Psalm 35. David does not ask for strength to fight harder. He asks God to fight for him. That changes everything. While you're trying to protect yourself, God is ready to step into the battle. And even hearing that can bring a first sense of relief. Take a slow breath with me right now. Just one. If the risk you're facing today is reacting the wrong way, losing your peace, or becoming someone you don't recognize just to defend yourself, this pause already matters. David describes enemies who lie without cause and accuse without truth, but instead of answering them with anger, he answers with prayer. That choice is not weakness, it's wisdom, because the greatest danger is not what the enemy does outside of you, it's what that pressure begins to change inside of you. When you keep replaying the injustice, it grows heavier. When you place the situation in God's hands, the weight begins to shift. You might be in a season where everything seems to move against you, doors closing, relationships strained, your name questioned, and the thought that keeps returning is simple and painful. What did I do wrong? Psalm 35 doesn't try to answer that question. It answers a better one. Who is fighting for you right now? David asks God to take up shield and spear. This is not poetic decoration. It's the language of battle. He is asking God to move to the front, not behind him, not watching from a distance, but standing between him and the threat. This request reveals something important. David is not asking to endure more pain. He is asking for divine intervention. When you stop asking only for endurance and begin asking for God's action, something inside you realigns. You no longer feel alone. Externally, things may not have changed yet. The messages may still come, the tension may still exist, but internally a quiet strength begins to form. There is a kind of peace that doesn't come from answers, but from knowing who holds control. It starts small, almost unnoticed. You realize you didn't react the way you usually would. Something that would have shaken you before now only touches you lightly. That's a sign the battle is shifting. But here is something you need to hear clearly. When God begins to move, pressure sometimes increases briefly, not because God failed, but because what is losing ground tries to resist. Don't let that confuse you. Psalm 35 shows us that deliverance is not always instant. It is progressive. Before the enemy falls, strength rises within you. Before plans collapse, peace begins to settle. And here's the first truth I want you to hold on to. If you are still standing, something has already been blocked. Even if the pain hasn't fully lifted, even if the answer hasn't arrived yet, the battle is real, but it is no longer only in your hands. And that changes the direction of everything. In the next part, we'll talk about what happens after this first shift, the questions that surface when waiting becomes hard, and how doubt tries to enter quietly after prayer. Because what comes next determines whether this battle will exhaust you or strengthen you. So let me ask you something before we continue. Are you willing to release control and let God lead this fight? Because from here on, the journey goes deeper. There comes a moment in every spiritual battle when the struggle stops feeling external and begins pressing inward. The noise fades, but the weight grows heavier. Waiting becomes more exhausting than the attack itself. If you have reached this place, you know how disorienting it feels. After the first prayer and the first sense of relief, quiet questions begin to rise. What if nothing changes? What if God does not act the way I expect? What if I keep trusting and still get hurt? This is often where strength starts to slip. Not because God has stepped away, but because uncertainty slowly begins to take control. David knew this tension. Psalm 35 was not written from a distance. It comes from someone still standing inside pressure, someone who had trusted God before and still faced opposition again. That detail matters more than we realize. Faith does not erase conflict immediately. It changes how conflict shapes the heart. When David speaks about his enemies, he does not minimize them. He does not pretend they are harmless. He recognizes their persistence and their ability to wound. They lie without cause. They accuse without truth. They move quietly. This may sound close to your own experience. You might be dealing with people who twist facts, reshape stories, and make you appear wrong even when you try to do what was right. And the most draining part is not always the attack itself. It is the injustice behind it. Injustice sinks deep into the soul. Here is the danger we need to name honestly. When injustice is not placed in God's hands, it slowly turns into bitterness. and bitterness begins making decisions for you. David understands this. So instead of staying focused on what his enemies are doing, he shifts his focus. He begins declaring who God is. This is not denial, it is strategy. When you repeat the problem, it grows larger inside you. When you declare who God is, the problem begins to lose authority. Here is an important shift in Psalm 35. David asks God to take up shield and spear. This is not poetic language, it is the language of battle. He is saying, God, step into the front line, not behind me, not watching from a distance, but standing between me and what is coming against me. This request reveals something essential. David is no longer asking only for strength to endure. He is asking for intervention, and that changes how prayer works inside you. When you stop asking only to survive and begin asking God to act, something realigns internally. You stop feeling abandoned in the fight. Externally, the situation may not look different yet. The pressure may still exist. The tension may still be present. But internally, something steadies. There is a peace that does not come from answers but from clarity. Clarity about who holds responsibility for the outcome. That peace arrives quietly. You notice that you do not react the way you used to. What once consumed your thoughts begins to loosen its grip. This is not indifference, it is grounding. It is a sign the battle is shifting. But there is an important warning. When God begins to move, pressure can increase briefly. Not because God has failed, but because what is losing influence resists being displaced. This moment confuses many people. They pray sincerely, then doubts rise. Old fears resurface. The situation feels heavier for a moment. Psalm 35 prepares us for this reality. Deliverance is rarely a single moment. It is a process. Before plans collapse externally, strength is built internally. Before lies are exposed, identity is reinforced. That reinforcement protects you because if the enemy cannot defeat you directly, it will try to exhaust you. David continues praying not because he sees immediate results, but because he trusts God's character. Faith anchored in outcomes is fragile. Faith anchored in character endures. When you trust who God is, time stops being an enemy. It becomes part of the work. You may still face the same situation tomorrow, but now, you are not carrying it alone. That is where real protection begins. There comes a point where pain stops being just something you feel and begins touching who you are. It is no longer only about what happened to you, but about what this experience is shaping inside your heart. If you have noticed yourself becoming quieter, more guarded, or less willing to trust, this is that moment. David reaches this place in Psalm 30. He is no longer describing only the attacks themselves. He begins describing what those attacks are doing to his soul, the weight of being treated unjustly while still trying to do good. This kind of pain is different. When someone harms you after you try to help them, the wound goes deeper than anger. It creates confusion and disappointment, and it makes you question parts of yourself you never doubted before. You begin asking questions you never wanted to face. Was I naive? Was I wrong to care? Is it safer to stop being who I am? This is one of the most dangerous moments in a spiritual journey. Not because God steps away, but because you may begin stepping away from yourself. David had every reason to harden his heart. He had been betrayed, accused, and mocked publicly. Yet instead of becoming bitter, he does something unexpected. He remembers who he was before the persecution. David recalls how he treated these same people when they were weak. He mourned for them, fasted, and prayed as if their pain were his own. That detail matters deeply. David is saying that the attack against him did not come because he was cruel or careless. He did good, and still he was wounded. If this resonates with you, hear this clearly. The opposition you are facing is not proof that you failed. Often it is proof that you did not become corrupted. But here lies a very real danger. When the good you did is repaid with harm, the temptation is to stop doing good altogether. Not out of hatred, but out of self-protection. David feels this tension. He speaks of people rejoicing over his pain, of being mocked openly, of watching others celebrate his suffering. And yet, he does not ask God to remove his feelings. He asks God not to abandon him. That distinction changes everything. He does not say, take this pain away immediately. He says, stay with me while it hurts. There is a deep difference between those prayers. One seeks instant relief, the other seeks presence, and presence is what sustains you when relief takes time. You may be in a season where answers have not arrived, but the pain appears every day. And the greatest fear is not that the enemy will win, but that you will lose yourself in the process. Become harder, more closed, less compassionate. Psalm 35 shows that David understands this risk, so he brings the emotional cost of the battle to God. He speaks honestly about shame, humiliation, and confusion. He does not pretend strength. This honesty is powerful, because pretending strength is exhausting, and it drains you faster than the battle itself. When you pray honestly, you stop performing faith and simply show up as you are. And this is where a quiet shift begins. As David pours out his pain, he slowly regains his voice. Not the voice that argues with enemies, but the voice that remembers who he is. He begins declaring that his mouth will still praise God and that his suffering will not be the final chapter. This is not denial of reality, it is a decision about direction. You may still be in the middle of the storm, and nothing around you may have changed yet. But if you can still speak honestly with God, something essential has been preserved. That means the attack has not won. Because the enemy's greatest victory is not hurting you, it is silencing you, and you are still here, listening, reflecting, and feeling. That matters more than you realize. This is where identity begins to heal, not because the pain disappears, but because it no longer defines you. David refuses to let injustice rewrite who he is. He allows God to witness his pain instead of burying it, and that choice keeps his heart alive. Many people survive battles like this but lose their tenderness along the way. Psalm 35 offers a different path, a path where you endure without losing your soul. In the next part, we will step into a crucial transition, the moment where prayer moves from pain into surrender. Not surrender that gives up, but surrender that releases control. There comes a moment when asking for justice is no longer enough, not because justice stops being necessary, but because the heart begins asking for something deeper. Peace in the middle of chaos. David reaches this moment in Psalm 35. After expressing the pain, the shame, and the pressure of being attacked unfairly, he does not harden his heart. He does not close himself off. Instead, he shifts inward. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. David no longer prays as someone demanding answers, he prays as someone surrendering control. You may have spent a long time trying to understand why this happened to you, looking for explanations, reasons, or closure. Yet none of that has brought rest. Some battles are not resolved in the mind, they are resolved in the spirit. David realizes that continuing to feed indignation will only prolong the pain, so he changes the tone of his prayer. He remains firm, but becomes more vulnerable. He asks God not to let him be put to shame, not to protect his pride, but to protect the testimony that matters. David understands that what is at stake is not only personal relief, but what others will learn about God through his story. You may not realize it, but the way you walk through this season is speaking to someone, even if no one says anything, even if it feels unnoticed. People watch quietly. When David asks God not to remain silent, he is not accusing God of absence. He is expressing dependence. He is saying, if you do not speak, I have no other voice. That is a mature prayer. Many want God to solve the problem, but fewer want God to lead the process. To lead means to pass through uncomfortable places, to wait, to trust when logic offers no comfort. This is where Psalm 35 begins transforming from a cry for defense into an invitation to surrender. And this is where I want to invite you to move beyond listening. If you can, right where you are, I want to invite you to pray with me. You do not need perfect words, just allow your heart to follow. Lord, you see what is happening. You know every attack I could not prove. Every word that hurt quietly, every night my thoughts would not rest. I do not want to harden my heart or lose who I am while defending myself. I place this battle into your hands. Be my voice when I feel silent. Be my strength when I feel tired. Guard my heart so that the situation does not change who I am. I trust that you see what no one else sees, and that you are working even when I cannot tell. Amen. If you prayed this sincerely, something meaningful just happened. Even if you do not feel different immediately. Prayer does not only change circumstances, it reorganizes what matters inside you. When that happens, clarity begins to return. The attacks may continue for a time. The situation may not be resolved yet, but it no longer controls your direction. There is a kind of rest that comes from surrender, not passivity, but active trust. David does not stop praying in Psalm 35, but from this point on, his prayer carries a different posture. He begins speaking not only about what he wants God to do, but about what he will do when God acts. He anticipates praise. This is not denial, it is mature faith. Faith that does not wait for everything to be fixed before responding. Faith that trusts the process. In the next part, we will step into this transition more fully, from pain toward expectation, from survival toward hope. This is where many begin to realize that they were not being abandoned, but prepared. And what comes next may help you understand why some answers take time, and why waiting is not wasted. After surrender, something subtle begins to change inside. Not because the situation disappears, but because it no longer sits at the center of everything. Fear still tries to speak, but it no longer controls the tone. David reaches this place in Psalm 35. He is still surrounded. The pressure has not vanished. The injustice has not suddenly been corrected. Yet something is different now. He no longer reacts to every movement of the enemy. He begins to move from conviction instead of emotion. This shift is quiet, but it is powerful. When surrender becomes real, you stop scanning constantly for danger. You begin guarding your heart instead. David understands that there is a loss greater than losing a battle. It is losing direction on the inside. That is why he begins to speak about testimony, about a future where his voice will still praise God publicly, about meaning beyond the pain. This does not mean he ignores the present. It means he refuses to let the present define the end. You may be in a season where survival feels like the only goal. Getting through today, holding yourself together, not collapsing under the weight that already requires courage. But Psalm 35 shows that there is another step, one that comes slowly and cannot be forced. The step of believing that what you are living through will not be wasted. That idea can be hard to accept when the pain is fresh, when the injustice feels personal, when the cost feels unfair. David does not spiritualize his suffering. He does not call pain good. He brings it honestly before God, and over time he begins to understand something deeper. The same situation meant to silence him will become part of his testimony. This is a key moment in Psalm 35. David speaks about the crowd, about others who will witness God's deliverance. This reveals an important truth. The battle was never only about him. That does not minimize his pain, but it gives his endurance meaning. There are people who will never hear a sermon, but they are watching how you walk through this, even if they never say it. Even if you never realize it. The enemy wants you to believe you are isolated, that no one sees, that nothing you do matters. Psalm 35 confronts that lie. David believes that when God acts, it will not be only a private relief. It will be a sign, and signs do not need to be loud. They need to be real. You may not yet be able to imagine a future where this makes sense. That is okay. Faith does not require full clarity. It requires continuation. Continuing without becoming bitter. Continuing without becoming hard. Continuing without losing hope. David continues praying, but now his words begin aligning with expectation rather than desperation. He speaks of joy before it arrives. He speaks of praise before the outcome is visible. This is not pretending. It is resistance, a quiet resistance that refuses to let pain decide the final meaning. There is a form of strength that does not shout. It does not argue. It simply remains. That may be the hardest thing you are being asked to do right now. Remain without hardening. Remain without giving up. Remain without letting disappointment turn into distance. If you are still here, listening, that already says something about you. People who have fully given up do not stay present. They shut down. Your presence matters because God works with what remains. In Psalm 35, David does not rush the ending. He allows the process to shape him, and that shaping prepares him for what comes next. Because when the pressure begins to lift, when signs of change appear, the heart must be ready not to lose its grounding. In the next part, we will talk about time, why some answers seem delayed, why silence does not mean absence, and why waiting is often the place where protection is happening quietly. If you feel like time is working against you right now, what comes next may change how you see this season. Time is often the most difficult part of faith, not because it moves slowly, but because it reveals what lives inside us while we wait. When answers delay, the mind begins to fill the silence with its own explanations. Maybe God forgot. Maybe this prayer did not matter. Maybe trusting was a mistake. David understood this struggle deeply. In Psalm 35, there is a clear space between the cry for help and the visible outcome. A space where nothing seems to change on the surface, yet everything is being prepared underneath. This waiting space is where many people lose strength, not because God is inactive, but because waiting without understanding feels unbearable. Waiting stretches the heart. It exposes impatience, fear, and hidden expectations. But here is something important to understand. God rarely acts before aligning the heart of the one who will receive the answer. Not because he needs time, but because we do. If deliverance arrives too early, it can damage what it was meant to restore. If the enemy falls before the heart is steady, pride or bitterness can rise in its place. David does not ask for a quick collapse. He asks for confusion, scattering, and interruption. This language reveals process, not spectacle. Some things are not removed instantly. They are weakened gradually, disarmed quietly, stopped without noise. You may be waiting for something dramatic, a clear apology, a visible reversal, a moment everyone can see, and God may be working in a different way. He may be draining influence instead of creating confrontation, changing direction instead of creating collapse, protecting you while you wait. The problem is that silence is often mistaken for absence, but silence is not emptiness. Silence is focus. While you do not see movement, God is working in places you could not carry emotionally if you saw everything at once. David continues praying without proof. This is maturity. He does not measure faith by speed. He anchors faith in God's character. That distinction changes how waiting feels. When trust is tied only to results, time becomes an enemy. When trust is tied to character, time becomes a tool. You may still wake up facing the same situation. You may still feel moments of doubt. You may still ask how long this will last, but something has shifted. You are no longer waiting alone. There is a subtle strengthening happening inside you, even if you do not feel it clearly yet. This strengthening prepares you for what comes next. Because not every answer comes gently. Some answers require steadiness to handle. There are victories that can overwhelm an unprepared heart, and God protects you from winning too soon. This waiting may actually be shielding you from reacting in ways that would cost you later. Blocking decisions made from pain. Blocking words spoken in anger. Blocking paths that look tempting but lead nowhere. Not every delay is denial. Some delays are protection. This realization can change how you carry the waiting. You still desire resolution. That does not disappear. But now you trust that time is not working against you. David continues speaking to God with honesty. He does not hide frustration. He does not pretend calm. He stays connected, and connection keeps the heart soft. This matters because prolonged waiting can harden people. They become distant, defensive, closed. Psalm 35 shows another way. Waiting without disconnecting. trusting without shutting down, remaining present even when clarity is missing. This kind of waiting is active, not passive. It guards the heart while God works, and slowly, signs begin to appear. Not always dramatic, not always obvious, but consistent. Pressure eases. Conversations lose intensity. The situation stops dominating every thought. These are not coincidences. They are early indicators. But this stage carries its own risk. When relief begins, it is tempting to rush forward to assume everything is finished, to relax vigilance too early. David does not do that. He stays aware, not fearful, but wise. Because sometimes the greatest danger appears when we think the fight is almost over. In the next part, we will talk about recognizing those early signs without losing balance, how to move forward without rushing, and how to protect what God has begun quietly. If you have felt time pressing against you, what comes next may help you see this waiting differently. Time is often the most difficult part of faith, not because it moves slowly, but because it reveals what lives inside us while we wait. When answers delay, the mind begins to fill the silence with its own explanations. Maybe God forgot, maybe this prayer did not matter, maybe trusting was a mistake. David understood this struggle deeply. In Psalm 35, there is a clear space between the cry for help and the visible outcome. A space where nothing seems to change on the surface, yet everything is being prepared underneath. This waiting space is where many people lose strength, not because God is inactive, but because waiting without understanding feels unbearable. Waiting stretches the heart. It exposes impatience, fear, and hidden expectations. But here is something important to understand. God rarely acts before aligning the heart of the one who will receive the answer. Not because he needs time, but because we do. If deliverance arrives too early, it can damage what it was meant to restore. If the enemy falls before the heart is steady, pride or bitterness can rise in its place. David does not ask for a quick collapse. He asks for confusion, scattering, and interruption. This language reveals process, not spectacle. Some things are not removed instantly. They are weakened gradually, disarmed quietly, stopped without noise. You may be waiting for something dramatic, a clear apology, a visible reversal, a moment everyone can see, and God may be working in a different way. He may be draining influence instead of creating confrontation, changing direction instead of creating collapse, protecting you while you wait. The problem is that silence is often mistaken for absence. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is focus. While you do not see movement, God is working in places you could not carry emotionally if you saw everything at once. David continues praying without proof. This is maturity. He does not measure faith by speed. He anchors faith in God's character. That distinction changes how waiting feels. When trust is tied only to results, time becomes an enemy. When trust is tied to character, time becomes a tool. You may still wake up facing the same situation. You may still feel moments of doubt. You may still ask how long this will last, but something has shifted. You are no longer waiting alone. There is a subtle strengthening happening inside you, even if you do not feel it clearly yet. This strengthening prepares you for what comes next. Because not every answer comes gently. Some answers require steadiness to handle. There are victories that can overwhelm an unprepared heart, and God protects you from winning too soon. This waiting may actually be shielding you from reacting in ways that would cost you later. Blocking decisions made from pain. Blocking words spoken in anger. Blocking paths that look tempting but lead nowhere. Not every delay is denial. Some delays are protection. This realization can change how you carry the waiting. You still desire resolution. That does not disappear. But now you trust that time is not working against you. David continues speaking to God with honesty. He does not hide frustration. He does not pretend calm. He stays connected, and connection keeps the heart soft. This matters because prolonged waiting can harden people. They become distant, defensive, closed. Psalm 35 shows another way. Waiting without disconnecting, trusting without shutting down, remaining present even when clarity is missing. This kind of waiting is active, not passive. It guards the heart while God works, and slowly, signs begin to appear. Not always dramatic, not always obvious, but consistent. Pressure eases. Conversations lose intensity. The situation stops dominating every thought. These are not coincidences. They are early indicators. But this stage carries its own risk. When relief begins, it is tempting to rush forward to assume everything is finished, to relax vigilance too early. David does not do that. He stays aware, not fearful, but wise. Because sometimes the greatest danger appears when we think the fight is almost over. In the next part, we will talk about recognizing those early signs without losing balance, how to move forward without rushing, and how to protect what God has begun quietly. If you have felt time pressing against you, what comes next may help you see this waiting differently. There comes a moment when the storm no longer has the final word, not because everything became perfect, but because you became steady. This is how Psalm 35 closes, not with noise, not with revenge, but with clarity. David does not end by celebrating the fall of his enemies. He ends by reclaiming his voice. After all the pressure, the waiting, the injustice, he is still able to speak of praise. That detail matters. Because true deliverance is not only when the attack stops, it is when your heart is no longer trapped inside the attack. You may have started this journey hoping to see someone fall, to watch a wrong be corrected publicly, to feel vindicated. And Psalm 35 does speak about confusion, scattering, and the interruption of unjust plans. But before any of that becomes visible, something more important happens: freedom inside. David's focus shifts from what was done against him to who God is. That shift reveals maturity. When deliverance comes, those who have grown do not become proud. They become grateful. David does not say, "I was right." He says, "God is just." That difference changes the meaning of the entire story. You may still be in the middle of your process. Some answers may already be forming, others may still feel distant. But if you are here now, something has already changed. You are not reacting the same way. You are not being consumed the same way. You are not carrying this alone anymore. That is not small. That is evidence of transformation. Psalm 35 teaches that God does not only dismantle unjust plans, He protects the heart of the one who trusts Him, and that protection is quiet, but powerful. One day you may look back and realize that what tried to break you actually refined you, that the pressure forced you to rely on God in a deeper way, that the waiting reshaped your priorities. This does not make the pain acceptable, but it makes it meaningful. David understands this as he commits to praising God publicly, not to draw attention to himself, but to point beyond himself. That is the final victory. When the story stops being about the enemy and starts being about God. If today you can say, even softly, that you trust God more than before, something has already been blocked. Something that wanted to harden you, something that wanted to silence you, it did not succeed. The power of Psalm 35 is not only in its words, it is in the path it invites you to walk, from fear to honesty, from honesty to surrender, from surrender to endurance, from endurance to testimony. If you have walked this path, even imperfectly, you have not wasted this season. Before we close, take a moment and reflect, not on what felt, but on what remained. Your faith, your sensitivity, your willingness to keep trusting even when it hurt. That is strength. And if you feel that you need to continue feeding this kind of faith, you do not have to do it alone. In the link in the bio, you can access a collection of traditional and powerful prayers used by generations of believers who also faced injustice, waiting, and opposition, yet chose to trust God through it. May the peace that began forming inside you continue to grow, and may what rose against you become part of a story that ends not in bitterness, but in praise.